Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Conversations with Nicole Show. I'm Nicole Huckabee. My guest today is Riaz Meghji, an acclaimed international keynote speaker and author of Every Conversation Counts. I was inspired by his impactful speech at a Nashville conference and knew I had to have him on my show. Riaz shares his expertise on the 5 habits of human connection that foster extraordinary relationships. With his insights featured in Fast Company, Harvard Business Review, and the Financial Post, Riaz is a leading voice in leadership and connection. He also brings a wealth of experience as a broadcaster with 17 years of hosting on CityTV, MTV Canada, and more. He helps people discover how meaningful conversations can transform our work environments and foster deeper connections. I really hope you enjoy our conversation. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am delighted to have as my guest today Riaz Meghji. He is a thought leader, respected thought leader internationally, and he is an author on the topic of human connection. And his book is Every Conversation Counts, which is why I just had to have him on my show. Good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for the invite and congrats on, what you're doing, putting out good messages to the world.
Well, thank you. When I heard you speak in Nashville at a conference, I said, I got to get to this guy. He's amazing. And we do have that TV background in common, which sort of makes us kindred spirits. So I really want to thank you for taking the time to join me today, because I think it's important what you're talking about, the human connection and how every conversation does count. So for my audience, sort of lead into how you became this great thought leader on the human connection. That really wasn't your path all those years ago.
Yeah, thank you. 22 years ago, my path was to be an investment banker. And I didn't think if I would look at my crystal ball 2 decades later of where we'd be. But I think even in the days of studying business, and for context, for those that are unfamiliar with my work, similar to you, like 2 decades interviewing people on camera and then ultimately writing the book and researching the challenges of isolation and loneliness for every conversation counts and how we overcome it together. I've always been fascinated by the power of a question to empower others to explore their own humanity and what we can discover in any single moment. And there was always a lesson, a tidbit, an idea, a story somebody would share in the course of an interview where I'd just write it down, a document, I'd research it. And in 2019, when I left television, I just decided I would love to create a go-to resource on human connection that could help those that were struggling in profound ways with loneliness and isolation. And then the pandemic hit, and everybody was talking about this profound disruption of who we are, how we connect, how important conversations are, and meaningful conversations in our day-to-day world. So I love this work, and I think the thing I hang my hat on is just maintaining a beginner's mindset. Because in any conversation, there's 2 teachers in the room, and no matter who we are, if we're speaking from the stage or speaking on camera, we have something to offer. But that audience, what they ask, what they say, how they reflect, is such a great moment to just absorb, understand, and learn how to take the message deeper. So it really is a journey of just maintaining a beginner's mindset.
I love that. Talk a little bit about, you mentioned there are certain topics that get to that human connection that we all need to know about. Walk me through some of those.
So when you say certain topics, are we talking about ideas on how to connect, or are we talking about the challenges and problems with connections as we see it today?
Well, I guess we could say both. I know you have several steps in your book about how to have those human connections and how we talk about every conversation counting. So let's just go with where you think is good.
Yeah, I think it's anytime I walk into a room and we talk about human connection, you can see the extroverts leaning in saying, I love this stuff. Let's do it. Let's just dive in. And then there are those that are more reserved and could be a bit more introverted and slightly uncomfortable. And, I'll see it right away. But my goal is always to just acknowledge the energy in the room because Personality types are one thing, cultural differences are another. We're in a changed world of work where people are connecting from a distance, which, hey, we get to do this, have this conversation from a distance. But there's a whole new choreography for connection. I find leaders are overworked, overwhelmed, overstretched, they're burned out. And some leaders even tell me when they care so much, they have empathy fatigue. Like, how do I place boundaries so I can show up for myself, so I can show up for others over the long term? And I think there's a lot of factors to just acknowledge of how we're all feeling. And I think a starting point is asking others, whether it's professional or personal, well, how do you like to communicate?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at multi-generational workforces, the younger generation, if we call people up, they might be like, is this an emergency? Why are you calling me right now? Some
I'm
people may,
texting you my information. I don't need to talk to you, right?
yeah, like everybody has a different mode. So I think, one of the habits I talk about in the book is how do we make our small talk bigger? And I think that starting point is understanding the mode of communication that is most comfortable, that makes people feel safe. Is it text? Is it email? Is it phone? Is it video? Is it in person? And assumptions can get in the way of how we connect. I like to think about the idea of always assuming positive intent with the people in front of us, but that is really the only assumption I'll ever make. Because if we look at how anyone interacts, how anyone reacts, maybe there's an emotional escalation in their response. I always look at the idea that behavior has meaning. And if it is a more intense response, is that coming from fear? Is that coming from shame? Is that coming from guilt? Is that coming from loneliness? Before we mirror that reaction and then have a dual escalation that turns into a confrontation instead of a collaboration. So I think, the first thing I try to do in making my small talk bigger with anybody, I'm not good at small talk. I'll just go deep right away with somebody. And some people are like, whoa, this is a bit much. But what I try to do for them is to prompt positive emotion. And one of the things I credit is the work done by the late psychiatrist Gordon Livingston. So he studied thousands of people on the happiness equation. And think about this: if you're meeting somebody and you want to connect with them and you have no context, you're just in a networking event, maybe you've gone to a conference, you're a little nervous, focus less on what you can say and more on what you can ask. And Livingston's work found that the happiest people have three things in common: they have something to do, they have someone to love, and they have something to look forward to. Simple baseline. So something to do. If you meet somebody for the first time, hey, so what are you creating in your life? How do you like to spend your time? What do you do that makes you come alive? And allow them to share instead of, hey, what do you do for a living? Because some people, that might be an insecurity if they're in between jobs. How do you like to spend your time? And allow them to maybe share a hobby, share an interest. Maybe they'll share what they do for a living. Imagine sitting at a table and you've got a lot of important people beside you and you're thinking, well, how do I connect with this person? When you think about that second pillar of Livingston's work of someone to love, simply just starting and saying, tell me about the people that matter most in your life. Open slate. And whatever they begin to share and watching their, body language and cues of how they light up. So tell me what you love most about that person. And they may open up on a deeper level about a relationship, a moment, an experience, a conversation they had with that person that gives you such a powerful cue. Because I know you've worked in the media. So many people ask me, Riaz, what's the best question to ask in any conversation? To me, I always smile. I'm like, it's the follow-up question.
I
Because
know. Yeah.
they're going to give you something. You can research all you want about a certain subject or a person, but if they give you something and you follow that cue, they'll know and they'll go deeper if you're following their lead. And that third idea is just having something to look forward to. And that could be personal or professional, something on the calendar that is like, what's making you smile today? What do you think is going to make you smile next month? And allowing someone just to light up and share what joy looks like in their life. I think those are simple yet effective ideas to get people going and opening up about what's really going on in their life.
Love all of that. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, if I'm sitting with you at the dinner table, what you've done is rephrase the question to draw someone in. And it also requires a little vulnerability within the table, too. And I was thinking, you know what? The question that you said, what are you looking forward to? I was thinking how much I was looking forward to talking to you today. And my looking
Thank
forward,
you.
I'm going to be thinking about, I can't wait for my audience to hear what you're saying, because I think too often we get caught up in what you just said. How are you? Where are you from? You have some kids. What do you do? And then if we can be more intentional about phrasing in a different way that allows someone to open up, that creates the human connection. And that's what helps in the workforce too, is where you play a major role as an international speaker on this topic of helping businesses and people in the workforce to lean in rather than to hide in their office. Is that correct?
Yeah, and building on what you're sharing, especially when we're at the table, and I think about the idea if we go to an event or maybe there's this could be professional or it could be social. The art of the group conversation um, it's almost been lost because I think when I observe social settings, if you have a group of, I don't know, 7 to 10 people at the table, what do most people do? There's a bit of discomfort, especially if there's unfamiliar people at the table, and then you start sidebar conversations, and then you've got like several conversations happening. So to have someone actually hold space, and a leader did this for me in February of 2023, and I thought this was brilliant. I live in Vancouver, BC, and his name's Michael. He wrote a terrific book called The Coaching Habit. He's been a great support over the years. So he invites 6 other people to the dinner table in Vancouver when he was visiting that he knew. And he just said, I thought you all were great people, want to come together for a meal. And for me, I'm always in for these sort of things, but I'm like, I don't know these people. So what is this conversation going to be like? And what I didn't realize, he came in with such pure intent where even the way we were seated at the table, 3 on each side, and he was at the head of the table, and he didn't allow the fragmentation of sidebar conversations to dominate the night. When he started, he said, I brought you all here with intention. And I'd just like to start with a few questions. So he guided this conversation that turned a potentially transactional evening into a transformational one where these strangers, us group of 7, got to know each other because he held space. He went not only first with the questions, and I champion this, when you talk about vulnerability, be the person that goes first to ask the question that is an invitation to connect. And also, if someone else has asked the question, you can also be the first to jump in and share something meaningful about your life, because that sets the tone where everybody else said, oh, wow, Nicole just shared that. You know what? I kind of know Nicole, but I never knew that.
Yeah.
But you know what? If that's what we're doing, you can be a role model for connection with our own vulnerabilities. So I think having somebody go first with asking the questions, having somebody go first with, answering them in meaningful ways, it just sets the tone and almost gives permission to spaces when we're all kind of sizing each other up of, is this a friend? Is this a foe? But above all, is this a safe environment to share what's really going on?
Yeah, that's really good. Be the person that goes first. I have been okay with doing that before, and that's probably because of my line of work. I didn't mind doing that, but that's not always easy for everyone. What are the skills that we need to be able to be the person that goes first?
Yeah, this is really good, and a lot of I get this feedback from a lot of leaders. They say, in concept, going first with my vulnerability, that's cool, but I don't want to appear as a source of weakness for my team. They're relying on me, so I think 2 thoughts come to mind. One, I think there's a key difference between vulnerability and value-added vulnerability. So if vulnerability is opening up about a struggle or weakness, and you don't want to appear that you're unreliable in a situation and you can't handle the situation, I invite the reframe of, what does value-added vulnerability look like, where you are introducing a sense of relatability.
That's what I was thinking.
So what
Yes.
was the struggle, what was the conflict, and what was the resolution? So they know you struggled through a powerful experience in your life, but here's the lesson you learned, and that lesson they can use to lift them up. So if we reframe it, it's a point of service. But the second part is, well, when is the right time to be vulnerable? In psychology, there's a term known as the pratfall effect, where the research and study emphasizes the importance of conveying credibility before vulnerability. So if you're that new leader and they're just getting to know you, or that new person in a social circle and they're not sure, have you demonstrated the competence to make important decisions? Have you demonstrated the idea of care and a consistency of care and checking in on others? And have you been that accessible resource that when they needed to ask for help, you were there for them? If you've demonstrated credibility that way and then lean in with your vulnerability, it will draw people closer. But if we haven't done that work to establish the credibility and trust first and then floor the gas pedal on vulnerability, especially in newer relationships, that can almost backfire on us and create distance instead of connection. So I think the two ideas, focusing on value added vulnerability when we do share, and the idea of credibility before vulnerability to really deepen our connections.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that what I'm hearing is that makes us relatable. You did use that word. And I think that when we look at other people when we're talking or a boss or we're trying to create a new friendship, relationship, whatever the case may be, we have to not necessarily have the solutions to every problem. But I think if people are seen and heard and listened to, and you understand and you have some empathy, not to the point of being exhausted empathy, but you have some empathy, you can start the dialogue so that people lean into each other and they create those human connections and relationships where I trust you, we can work through this together, and you're important to me, and I value our relationship now. Is that on the right track?
Yeah, I love what you're saying because to me, what that represents is that when people feel cared for,
Mhm.
they will care more. And in this day and age, when everything moves so fast, we're living in a culture of convenience and instant gratification. When you know somebody's reaching out just for the sake of reaching out and they're not reaching out to ask for something, you know they care about you. And I
Mhm.
think that is such a simple yet powerful starting point to know that, hey, Nicole's in my corner. She cares about me, not just as a professional, but as a human being. And I think it makes a big difference in this culture of efficiency, which, can be the enemy of human connection.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I used to say in my line of work, you would hire people, and I said, you can't make people care. But I think the one thing that we can do is we can show people, show former co-workers, show your friends, show your colleagues, whatever the case may be, what it looks like to care. And maybe that's a game changer. And I think
Mhm.
we're all put here on this earth to make a difference. And you are definitely making a difference in what you're doing. So, how does that feel to be a part of a movement, to be the movement of making a difference in the lives of people that is so positive?
Hmm. I'm grateful that you describe it that way, and these words are very kind. Thank you. To describe it as a movement resonates with me because how does it feel? I feel moved every time I'm in a room and I wait for the reflections to come from the audience, whether it's in the room during the session or what happens, when we first met and you get to socialize with people if you're at the event post session and just understand what stood out for them,
Yeah.
what was meaningful, what is something they're going to use from the session, and to know you can give someone a tool, a gift, an idea, or a thought that can make their life better. Sometimes I pinch myself that I get to do this work and just think, how rewarding is this day in and day out? It is so special, it is so meaningful and purposeful to me that I love the work and I just continue to study it, reiterate, and just continue evolving the message on human connection, because I think at the end of the day, this connection is the starting point for anything we want to do in our lives.
100%. And thank goodness for people like you that are in making us realize that we all have purpose, we all have meaning in our life, and that no matter if we are wherever we work or whatever we do in life, we don't have to be the CEO of a big company to have purpose and passion and to care for one another and to have those human connections, because at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about, is relationships and making those relationships have meaning, have purpose, be wholesome, have value, because that's where you sit. That's where you sit when it's all over. It's not always in the CEO chair. It's with somebody, hopefully, however you connect, that human connection. So I just love what you're doing. I just think it's amazing. And I think that it's that you empowering us to see that, empowering others to see that, gives them hope and gives them purpose, because oftentimes I think people think, well, what I do doesn't count. Whether you're the house cleaner or you're the CEO, what you do counts, and you can make a difference in someone's life.
Mhm. Absolutely. I always think about the idea that we're always one conversation away from living a completely different life. That is the mantra I consider day in and day out. No matter how good your life is at this point in time, no matter how difficult it might be, there could be a shift at any given moment. And when someone or something appears in front of you, how do we embrace that moment? What are the questions we are asking? Is this transactional, or is it something that's going to teach you something that's going to change the way you show up for yourself and show up for others? And it can happen at any point in time. We just need to stay open with that beginner's mindset and embrace it when it comes.
I agree. I think we get caught up in this busy world. We've got a schedule. We're going here. We're going there. We have things that are heavy on our hearts sometimes. I always think about this whenever I'm standing in line somewhere, and things are just not going well. You're trying to check out with your groceries, and the person there, the clerk, is having a hard time. And I think you can make a difference when you go up there, when you smile, you have understanding, you realize at the end of the day, some things just aren't that big of a deal. And I think if we can shift that, sometimes I think people are just too quick to be nasty. What if we were just too quick to be kind? Think how that would be a game changer, and think of how that would change our world and the human connection right there, that is being made at that moment. It's such a difference, and you are just making such a difference by your messages, with your keynote speaking in front of hundreds and hundreds of people all across this world, and through your book. So as we close, because I know you have a hectic schedule and you're busy, give my audience some final thoughts and how they can connect with you.
Mm. Well, I guess as a final thought is day in and day out, how can we just do one thing to shift breaking out of autopilot mode? I think you were in the session of all the interviews I've ever done. One that stands out to me was with Dr. Wayne Dyer, the late Dr. Wayne Dyer, thought leader of a generation. And we were in the green room once, and it was the week of his 74th birthday. And I remember saying to him after we exchanged formalities, hey, if I'm lucky enough to make it to my 70s, how do you celebrate that milestone? And he just kind of looked at me like, this is a no brainer. And he said, I just asked myself a question on this birthday like I ask on every other birthday. And I leaned in and I was like, well, what's the question? And he said, did I live 74 years or did I live the same year 74 times? And I remember I smiled and I looked at him and I said, well, dude, happy birthday to us. That is pretty good. But it did make me think, when I live my life, am I living intentionally? When I reflect back at the last year, how have I grown? How have I changed? If I haven't, what can I do differently? So I think for your audience and this conversation, what's one thing you can do to just step out of your comfort zone and just suck at something new? And just lean into that, sit into that, grow from that, and understand that there'll be a different person that emerges out of that, and that can be a beautiful, beautiful thing. And to do these things and have these conversations online, riazmeghji.com, all of the content surrounding the book, the thought leadership is all there. Social media, we're always sharing ideas and just always listening to the audience. If you ever see anything on any of our platforms that intrigues you, DM me. Let me know what's on your mind, your heart, and what you want to learn more about, because I'm always listening to what matters most as we just move through this journey and how human connection evolves.
So good, so good. Okay, I'm going to be DMing you all the time.
You can slip into my DMs any day of the week. I'm a big Nicole fan here, so thank you.
Oh gosh, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. I am just most appreciative.
Hey, I love the invite. I love your vibe and I love what you're creating. So thank you as well.
Thank you. That will do it for this edition of Conversations with Nicole. Until I see you again, I hope you have a great day.